Hey guys, this is Gatsby with Tape, and today you join me for episode 10 of Kerbal Wars, and drifting through this silhouette of maybe being a little bit too cinematic in the low frame rates. We drift towards my new ship, a ship I've enlisted to take down the rebels at Duna. As we know from last episode, we have a rebel threat at Duna, and we've got a brand new ship. Well, actually, it's kind of a bit of an old ship. It's a rehash of an old one, kind of like the current space industry, where we built a bunch of rockets in the 90s and the 80s and things, and now we just use them, because no point innovating, unless you're SpaceX, or actually quite a few companies these days. But still, NASA use newer engines. Old ones are rubbish. Well, no, they're good. But still, I don't know. I don't know why I'm talking about the economics of the space industry right now. It just annoys me how there's kind of a bit of a lack of innovation. But what do I know? I'm just a guy who plays video games. Anyway, on to the actual episode. This is basically the same as the Illustrious. Well, it's a rehash of the Illustrious. It's slightly better. It's my Mark II. It's just much better than the old Corvette. If you don't remember, it was back in an earlier episode around Minmus. We had a rebel threat, and there was a station we needed to deal with. So I used the Illustrious Corvette, and this is a Corvette Mark II. Don't have a name for it yet. Might just name it something else. It has the same weapon systems. It has those kind of RCS torpedoes and the solid rocket booster missiles, which are very effective against large ships and stations, as proved around Minmus. But it is much improved. It now has 5 engines on the back. The fuel setup's completely different, as I will try to look at in a little second. Yeah, it's much smaller than a normal second. But yeah, as you can see, there's 5 engines differently spaced now. Looks much nicer. The fuel density is much better because I'm not using liquid fuel and oxidizer tanks because they're no longer needed. And those mounts for the RCS missiles look much nicer, I think. So yeah, it's just a much sleeker version of, well, it is much sleeker, actually. It's the same shell, but it's completely different internals except for the weapon systems. But I think it will be very useful in our fight against the rebels around Duna. So, talking of the fight against the rebels around Duna, we've got a new craft launching, some actual new technology, although we've used most of it before. So not really new technology, it's some of my heavy fighters, although I've only ever used one, which is just guarding my station right now. If you don't remember, I put a station up a while ago, which still isn't really very completed. So that's basically what this is. This is a couple of fighters that'll be heading to Duna as well as part of my fleet, because I'm sending the carrier I put up last episode, if you didn't see that, and then my Corvette and these fighters. I've actually left this launch in because it's few enough parts for the physics not to be too damning. I know I said last episode about, well, I for the bigger ships, I just tend to leave out the launchers now because it's impossible to record and play, because they've changed how the physics work on the upper, well, Squad have changed how the physics of heating works. Basically, there's now a kind of a transition between temperature on the outside of, like, fairings and cargo bays and that sort of thing to temperature on the inside, so it's a little more intensive, and it's nice on smaller craft, but on bigger ones it's a bit painful. But it's not really Squad's fault that it doesn't run very well. It's the developers of Unity who, for some reason, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that one core in multi-core processors is more than enough for physics engine stuff. I'm sure it's very difficult to balance it on multiple cores, but for games such as this, it would be really, really nice. And it's not like anyone uses a single core CPU anymore, so I think anything running on one core is pretty terrible. So that is probably the source of most of your problems in Kerbal Space Program and frame rates, is that the physics takes so long to process because it's only on one core. That's why it's best to have a fast processor for something like Kerbal Space Program. But anyway, ditching our fairings, yeah, my little rundown of things I've discovered about why this game is a bit laggy in the way I'm playing it. Well, obviously it's laggy because I'm using loads of parts, and I obviously expect that, but it's just a bit of a shame when the physics is a little testing. But it is a very nice feature they've actually added. I do very much like how they've redone the heating thing. I know I said that it was really annoying last episode, but now I've looked into it, it does look quite nice. Well done, Squad! Anyway, let's push my fighters into orbit. You can see there's a weird thing around these 2 fighters. Basically, it's 2 fighters with a transfer stage, and there's also a big fuel tank on the front of the transfer stage, which is fuel for the fighters out at Duna. So this is a bit of a docking, well, it's a bit of a kind of, not station, but, you know, just berthing for these fighters, although I've just realised it can only really hold one fighter at a time once I've decoupled one of them, so hopefully we'll lose one in battle. No, hopefully they will survive the battle. We're not really sure what we're up against. We only got one little low-resolution picture that we saw last episode. But we'll just decouple all of these things, firing off some explosions in space. Much less deadly than SpaceX's explosions. Oh, damn, now I'm sad again. Anyway, jettison these manually because I've fucked up all the staging. And yeah, this is my my ship. Now let's move out of the way of this debris from these jettison shrouds and activate these engines and just move away. Hopefully these fighters will be very effective pieces of hardware out against out at Duna, because I wasn't actually going to bring them originally, but I decided fighters would be a very smart move. And turns out the new cockpits light up. I love how they've redone the cockpits very slightly. These cockpits have been just slightly changed. Their skins, they look so much better than they did before. I don't know what they did, but it's amazing. So yeah, this is, well, you can see it a little better now in the light. Each of these carries 4 missiles. I didn't bring any extra missiles. I might, oh no, I probably won't bring any extra missiles. I'm going to send a little extra cargo thing after my ships, though, because there's a few things I need to bring. And I've actually put some radiators on this. I'm not sure how effective those will be. They're just kind of standalone radiators, and they're not anywhere really near the engines, but I'm hoping it'll help dissipate heat, although these aren't very surrounded parts, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But anyway, hopefully it'll also keep the solar panels cool. But yeah, you can see my fighters quite well now, and hopefully they will be key players in our fight against tyranny. Although, tyranny, they are rebels, but still, they're evil people. They're not on my side, so they're on the wrong side. Anyway, we've got an encounter with Duna, just here. We've warped time forward a few days. Well, 75 days. And now it's time to send the fighters off. I'm sending the fighters off first because there's the fewest parts, so the frame rates will be slightly better, so slightly less painful. I'm going to do the carrier last because the carrier is a bit painful, a bit horrible. The frame rates are pretty bad. So yeah, I do just pretty much cut through most of this because it took a while and it's just burning, but I thought show you the starts, the ends, the encounters, that sort of thing. That just seems to make sense. On the way though, we did get a bit of overheating, as you can see here on the engines. Nothing major, and it's only near the end of the burn. Since Dune is quite close, it only takes about 1,000 meters a second of change in velocity to get there, so that's quite nice, so the burns aren't too big. But we did get a little bit of overheating, so I thought I'd just show you that to show you the flaws in my designs. And then skipping ahead, that wasn't just an insane burst of thrust, that was just a jump cut. And we're going to get our encounter with Duna. Although we don't actually get an encounter with Duna, we need to make a plane change. But all my ships have a ridiculous amount of Delta V. I was a little worried that they didn't have too much Delta V, because I usually play with MechJeb or Flight Engineer or something like that to tell me how much they have. But it's kind of fun to eyeball it. I know, well, I actually... well, I am still using no mods. I was actually going to use... part welder for a few of my new ships, but it's still not been updated, which is a shame. I was just going to part weld some things that could be welded together. It wouldn't massively reduce parts, but it would slightly increase performance, so that would be nice. But anyway, that is on its way, so it's time to send the Corvette after it. This will be probably the key player in the battle. Since last time we had a fight with this, it took out a station, and it took out a fighter very easily. With its anti-fighter weaponry, proved to be very effective, and it's very dense. That's why I quite like this smaller design, because it's very dense. It absorbs like impacts quite well. But yeah, hopefully, and this burn was actually quite quick with those 5 engines. It took about the same amount of time as the other as the fighters, because this is kind of my rapid response sort of thing. And you can see I'm getting my Apple apps up now. It is burning surprisingly well. I am surprised at how well these ships perform, considering their gigantic size. Although the frame rates did make the burns take a long time. But anyway, here we are completing our burn. And you can see on all of these, I've planned the plane changes and the tweaks up near Duna. They're not actually perfect right now, but it's more of a marker for me to know what I've got to do when I get there. But there'll be a little time before we actually, get there, even though this is a reasonably rapid response, and I've tried to get my encounters as quick as possible on a low energy trajectory. Obviously, I could do a high energy trajectory, but then I'll probably have no fuel, and I need fuel for a battle, since there will be a pretty serious engagement. But yeah, it looks pretty good. We've got it on the... on the right side of our orbit, so we'll be there reasonably soon. I'm not sure how long. I think... Are we in Kerbal days? I'm not sure. Anyway, here goes the... what is this? The Draco carrier. Although it's not actually called Draco, that's just its class. And it has 8 engines, so surprisingly, the burn time was actually lower than all of the others. Although the frame rates were much lower, so this burn took ages. But I love how it looks here. It kind of looks... I don't know, I don't know about this angle, I haven't really noticed it until just then, but it looks kind of very mechanical from here with all the engines and all the bits sticking off it. I don't know what it is about that look, but I think it looks quite cool. I like that. I don't know why, but hopefully this will also be quite... Well, this isn't going to be so much engaged in the battle. It can if it needs to be, because it does have 2 reasonably heavily armed fighters. because I've designed those new missiles, which should be very nice. And yeah, but hopefully this won't have to do a battle. Hopefully it will just be a pretty serious player in just taking over, well, we're securing it after the battle, securing Duna after the battle, being like my base of operations. And I just left that bit just then in so you could see how slow it was. But anyway, we're coming to the end of the burn. Even this was quite slow, but still, we do get our encounter. And it was, yeah, well, frame rates aren't so bad when you're just doing like burns, because yeah, you just sit there and watch something else while it does it. It's when you're actually moving things relative to other things, it's a bit noticeable. Or if you're turning, or doing anything, or launching. Anyway, we have our our course laid, and it'll just be another course correction. And hey, maybe if I do this right, this could arrive completely after the battle. Although I wouldn't be that foolish to not bring this to the battle just in case, because it is a battle carrier. Anyway. Okay, bit of a random cut there because I accidentally took out all the opacity from this track so I couldn't see what was going on. Anyway, this is a weird little design I've made for a just landing anywhere sort of vehicle, basically. Since it can land anywhere with those VTOLs, such as, Airless World, or with the weird wings, it should be designed to land on, air-full worlds. How would that be? Just worlds with air. But annoyingly, this was a very early prototype and it's quite stupid. I just want like a really weird wing setup, kind of going for something that doesn't just look like a plane. So that's what this is, although it just looks kind of like two gliders strapped to what will now hit the ground very hard. So I went for something a little more sane and with some actual control surfaces. This is basically the basic concept with wings on both sides, so it looks less like a plane. I guess it's pretty much just a space biplane. But yeah, I like this idea of just kind of a weird looking thing that can land anywhere, because if it has vertical engines it can land on like the moon or well, I don't know, probably Duna, and you can glide on Duna quite well because it has a surprisingly thick atmosphere for a Mars-like planet. However, I don't do this quite so well, and the thrust isn't really lined up very well, and neither's the lift. But the VTOL engines work quite well, but I haven't linked them to the main fuel system, so this might be doomed to fail as well. But anyway, this is pretty much the end of the episode. I know it's been a shorter one, and I'm sorry for that. There hasn't been like a crazy amount of stuff in here, but it did take me a long time to record the burns, and I'm very busy right now trying to go to Turkey. So yeah, I will have another one of these up in a week or something like that when I'm on holiday, and then after that I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this. I hope you're looking forward to the big battle we'll have at Duna. That will be awesome, and I know I'm keeping you waiting a little for a little longer, but it should be pretty cool. So I'll see you then. This has been KSP with Tape. I will see you next time.